The Ellsworth City Council has voted to move forward with pursuing a different site for the new Hancock County courthouse. WABI told you last November city officials were working to conduct surveys and studies to analyze the potential of a site off of High Street in Ellsworth. The site behind LL Bean checked all of the boxes after the city felt pushback from residents on the state's proposal of a Surrey Road location. However, a new road would need to be funded and built to access the courthouse, which is an additional project.
Move forward with the alternative proposal, and I'll talk a little bit more about the pros and cons on that proposal now that it's been finalized. We can take no action, which is to effectively allow the state to move forward on building the courthouse at the Surrey Road locations as previously planned by the state. Or if it's the council's will to, and they aren't comfortable with the Wardwell property, aren't comfortable with the Surrey property, they could pursue a moratorium on courthouses in Ellsworth.
The council voted to move forward with multiple ideas on how to drop the cost of the $1.5 million road project. Ideas included talks with State Senator Nicole Grahowski on a possible bill or pursuing a municipal partnership initiative.